There is now, according to a 2025 study, roughly a plastic spoon's worth of microplastic in the average human brain. That's the headline you've probably seen. It's real, it's published in one of the most respected journals in medicine, and it is also one of the most misunderstood findings of the last 2 years. Because there is plastic in your brain, and the plastic in your brain is harming you, are two completely different statements, and only one of them is actually supported. Let me show you exactly where the science ends and the speculation begins. This is the video the whole series has been building toward. We've talked about what's in your food and water, and we've debunked the detox myths. Now we go to the place the headlines are loudest, the two organs it scares people most to hear about, the heart and the brain. And for both, there's a genuinely landmark study, not a wellness influencer's claim. Actual top-tier, peer-reviewed research. So let's read them the way we read everything on this channel, carefully and all the way to the end. Start with the heart, because it's the stronger of the two studies. In 2024, a team led by Rafael Marfella published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. And if you know medical journals, you know that's about as high as the bar goes. Here's what they did. They followed just over 300 patients who were already having surgery to clear plaque out of their carotid arteries, the arteries in your neck that feed your brain. When surgeons removed that plaque, the researchers analyzed it for microplastics. The finding: in about 58% of patients, they detected polyethylene, the most common plastic in the world, right there inside the arterial plaque. Some also had PVC. And then comes the number that made headlines everywhere. Over the next 34 months, the patients who had microplastics in their plaque had a 4.5 times higher rate of heart attack, stroke, or death from any cause compared to the patients who didn't. 4.5 times. That is a genuinely alarming number, and I'm not going to talk you out of taking it seriously. But I am going to make sure you understand what it does and doesn't mean, because this is exactly the point where responsible science and viral fear part ways. Here's the critical word: association. This study found that two things occurred together: plastic in the plaque and worse outcomes. It did not prove that the plastic caused the worse outcomes. And I'm not editorializing when I say that. The authors themselves state in the paper that their study does not establish causation. That's their word, not mine. Why the caution? Because the people who accumulate more microplastics might differ in other ways. How much processed food they eat, where they live, their overall exposure to pollution, factors that could independently drive heart disease. The researchers controlled for the obvious ones like diabetes and blood pressure, which makes the finding more interesting, not less. But more interesting is still not proven cause. And there's a second limitation you deserve to know about, because a good scientist tells you the weaknesses of even the studies they find compelling. After the paper came out, other researchers wrote into the journal raising a real concern: contamination. Measuring microplastics is fiendishly hard precisely because plastic is everywhere, including in operating rooms, surgical equipment, and the lab itself. The critics pointed out that the study didn't publish the full set of anti-contamination controls you'd want to be certain the plastic came from the patient and not the process. The authors defended their methods. That debate is still open. This isn't me undermining the study. It's me showing you the actual state of the science, which is a striking, important finding, with real questions still attached. Now the brain, the one that really went viral. In early 2025, a team led by Alexander Nehart at the University of New Mexico published in Nature Medicine. They examined brain, liver, and kidney tissue from autopsies, and they found microplastics in all three, but far and away the most in the brain. Their vivid comparison, and again, this is the researchers' own framing, was that the amount in a typical brain added up to roughly the mass of a plastic spoon. They also found that brain samples from 2024 contained about 50% more plastic than samples from 2016, suggesting the accumulation is rising over time, tracking the rise of plastic in the environment. Here's what makes this study credible, and it's worth understanding because it's the opposite of the sloppy science we usually flag. The lead researchers were so startled by their own results that, in one senior author's words, they didn't believe it at first. So they didn't just publish. They confirmed the finding using 3 completely independent measurement techniques, 3 different physical methods, all pointing at the same answer. That's how you're supposed to handle a shocking result. It doesn't make the number the final word. Measuring nanoplastics in tissue is a young science, and other researchers have raised methodological questions in the very same journal. But the core detection is about as robustly done as this field currently allows. And now the part that matters most, the part almost every headline skips. Finding plastic in the brain tells you it's there. It does not by itself tell you it's causing harm. This is the single most important distinction in this entire topic, so let me make it concrete. The same study found that brains of people who had been diagnosed with dementia contained 3 to 5 times more microplastic than those without. That sounds like a smoking gun. It is not, and here's why. When someone has dementia, the brain's own cleanup and drainage systems break down. So it is entirely possible, genuinely likely, even, that the plastic didn't cause the dementia, but rather that a dementia-damaged brain is simply worse at clearing plastic out. The correlation could run in exactly the opposite direction from the scary interpretation. The researchers are explicit that their data cannot tell these apart. Anyone who shows you that 3 to 5 times number as proof that plastic causes dementia is either misunderstanding the study or hoping you will. So where does that leave us, honestly? Let me give you the state of the evidence in plain terms, because the truth here is neither nothing to see nor we're doomed. What is now firmly established by multiple independent research groups using multiple methods is presence. Microplastics have been detected in human blood, placenta, lungs, kidneys, livers, and now brains and arterial plaque. That plastic gets into the human body and reaches even well-protected places is no longer seriously in dispute. What is not established is the dose-response harm in humans, the clean causal line from this much plastic to this much disease. We have strong association for the heart. We have presence and biological plausibility for the brain, supported by animal studies where nanoplastics fed to mice did reach the brain and did trigger inflammation. Plausibility plus association plus animal data is enough to take this seriously as a research priority. It is not the same as proof of harm in you personally, and any honest scientist will tell you that gap out loud. Here's the mistake I want to inoculate you against. When people see plastic in the brain, the instinct is to reach for a detox, a supplement, a cleanse, a protocol. We spent an entire earlier video on why that doesn't work. There is no demonstrated way to scrub microplastics back out of human tissue once they're there, which means the scary organ-level findings, if anything, point the exact same direction as every other video in this series. The leverage is on the way in, not the way out. Less plastic reaching your body in the first place, especially from heated plastic and food packaging, is the only intervention with any mechanistic sense behind it right now. And the meta lesson, one more time, because these two studies are the perfect teachers of it. A finding can be real, published, and important, and still be systematically overstated the moment it leaves the journal. Plastic is in your arteries and your brain is true. Plastic is giving you heart attacks and dementia is not something either study proved. Holding both of those in your head at once, taking the findings seriously without swallowing the exaggeration, is the entire skill this channel exists to build. If this is the kind of breakdown you find useful, taking the scariest headline in the room and reading the actual study behind it, that's what this channel does, every time. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.